Hello, friends. We are going to be studying chapter 2 of Mishna Eruvin. Tonight's class, like all the other Mishnah study classes, is dedicated in loving memory of my dear mother, Rivka Bas Harav Reb Shleimai. We welcome all those who are here, and we welcome those who are joining us live on Facebook. The second chapter is going to be dealing with, in a number of the Mishnahs, going to be dealing with an issue that arises when people would be oila regel, when they would make the pilgrimage to the Beis Hamikdash. Now, the issue at hand is that you have many thousands of people 3 times a year who are traveling up to the Beis Hamikdash, and not only are they traveling to the Beis Hamikdash, but they're bringing animals with them, because when, as we've mentioned in Masechtas Chagiga, when there are sacrifices that you are meant to bring during the festivals, during the pilgrimages. So you can either buy them from the temple treasury, or you can bring your own. And of course, many people chose to bring their own. So now here you have many thousands of people, many thousands of people traveling with their livestock. Now, people themselves require food and drink. The animals require food and drink. So the animals, any animal that was being brought as a korban, can eat grass along the way. But drink, it needs somewhere to drink, and it's traveling many miles for this pilgrimage. So now the question that becomes is, what do we do in terms of water for these pilgrims? So to solve this problem, there were public wells that were established along the route, and people can go and bring up water to drink for themselves, and bring up water for their animal, for their livestock. Now, in those days, you couldn't just get into a car and go from Eilat to Hermon in one day. A trip would take a very long time, and it could be even people were coming from out of the country as well. So, which means that oftentimes people were traveling, and it would take them during their travels over a Shabbos. And so they would need to camp on the side of the roads during Shabbos. So now you have a situation where you have people who need water for themselves, and you have a situation where you have animals that need a lot of water. So what do you do? Now, the area around the wells could either possibly be a Rishus Harabim, because they're by public thoroughfares, or more likely it's a Carmelis. It's on the side of a Rishus Harabim somewhere, because when you in the middle of the road itself, it's not likely to have a well. But these wells they're not private wells, they're public wells. So they would be in these plazas next to the road. Now, a plaza next to the road is most often going to be a Carmelis. Now,
kind of like a gas station off a freeway.
So we've already established in last week's chapter that a plaza or an area that's not on the road itself, but it's on the side of the road, and you don't have that many people traveling at it regularly, but it's only for the people who go to the side of the road, that would be a Carmelis. On a biblical level, it would not be a public domain, but from the rabbis, they call it a Carmelis, which has the strictures of both a private domain and a public domain. So now, we have to figure out how we're going to create a situation where somebody is going to bring up water from the well. Now, the wells, how big is a well? Well, even a small well is at least 4 handbreadths by 4 handbreadths and deep, which makes it undoubtedly a Rishus HaYachid, bona fide Rishus HaYachid on a biblical sense. So now, whether or not the area surrounding is either a Rishus Harabim, in some cases, or a Carmelis, in either case, you're not allowed to carry from a Rishus HaYachid into the Carmelis. Now again, the reason a Carmelis is prohibited is because it looks very similar to Rishus Harabim, and the demarcation lines are not really there. We don't know where it starts and where it ends.
Foggy lines, yeah.
So because the lines are blurred, we're concerned that people will make a mistake. And this is a serious prohibition of carrying on Shabbos, which is one of the 39 prohibited melachas. Sorry? From one domain to another domain, from a private domain to a public domain.
Specifically from a Rishus HaYachid into a Carmelis.
But a Carmelis, on a biblical sense, there's no Carmelis. There's either Rishus HaYachid or Rishus Harabim. But the Carmelis was established by the rabbis to have all the prohibitions of a Rishus HaYachid and a Rishus Harabim. So you can't. So it's both at the same time.
So it's essentially it's a Rishus HaYachid within a Carmelis near a Rishus Harabim.
I didn't follow that, but
because the well is Rishus HaYachid.
Well, the well is a Rishus HaYachid, but inside a Rishus Harabim or a Carmelis. Correct. Yes. Okay, so now what happened was the sages realized that this is going to be a huge problem. So they decided that although there are rules for creating an enclosure that would make it a full Rishus HaYachid from the rabbis, like in a Rishus Harabim, if you put a fence around a small area, but a 10-foot by 10-foot fence.
We said it last week. You can put up a fence
in middle of a Rishus Harabim, that becomes a Rishus HaYachid right there in the middle. Now, putting up a full fence and full partitions would be difficult for this purpose.
But didn't we say you could put?
So hold on one second. So what the rabbis did is they created a special circumstance for the Eiler Regel, for the pilgrims. And as we're going to get to in the first Mishnah, we'll understand what's going on here. What are we talking about in this introduction? So let's jump into the Mishnah. And I have pictures that I copied and printed out here. So now, all of this information is important so that we understand what we're talking about when we get to the first Mishnah. It's Mishnah Aleph, Oisin Pasim Labeirois. One can erect slats for public walls. Arba Dyumdin Nirikin Shmoinim. So when we have either a Carmelis or a public domain, and the Eiler Regel, the pilgrims are coming up, and now it's Shabbos, so it's before Shabbos. So what could we do? So you could not put up a full enclosure, but rather you could put up 4 slats, and each slat is in like an L, 90-degree angle. You can see that here. So each one goes out a bit, and we'll talk about the size of them soon. So if you have one on one corner, and one on another corner, one on a third corner, one on a fourth corner, so say the rabbis says Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, that this is enough to establish Rishus HaYachid in this little area. So the well itself is, of course, a Rishus HaYachid. And now, because you have these slats, the Rishus Harabim are not going to flow through it in the same manner. So it creates, at the very least, a Carmelis style type area. It's not a regular thoroughfare. It's marked out as a well area. And therefore, once you have those 4 slats, the 4 L slats, and assume we're going to say that they're 10 Tfachim high, so now they've identified or they've secured some sort of boundary. That's obviously not a full boundary. It's a visual marker. Yeah. Which now makes it that it's not a Rishus Harabim and it's not a Carmelis. What is it? It's a private domain. So when you come to the well, when you're lifting out water from the well, the water in the well is, of course, Rishus HaYachid, and now we're bringing it out and
to
to drink it or give it to the animals. So now it's Rishus HaYachid to Rishus HaYachid.
Now, how much space can you have in between these slats?
We're going to get to that. So Rabbi Yehuda says that so long as you have four L-shaped posts, slats, one on each side, so they're four, but they're on eight. They look like eight because each one looks like two put together, and maybe they are two put together. So it's four, but it's eight. Different Rabbi Yehuda. This is what Rabbi Yehuda says, and that will be enough to establish the Rishus HaYachid. Rabbi Meir says, Shmoine nirin kishnei masar. What you need is actually 8 posts, but they look like they are 12. And that is what this looks like. So each corner has the L.
And then a flat.
And then a flat one in between on both sides. Mm-hmm. So if you count it, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. The sides are 90-degree angles.
6 plus 2.
And there's
6 plus 2.
There's 6 plus 2, right? 6 on the sides and 2 in the middle.
6, 12,
but there's 4. So in any case, there's 4 that look like 8 plus another 4. So which is 8, but it looks like 12 because the side ones look like 2 that are put together since they're formed in the shape of an L or 90-degree angle. And so he says, Shmeina nirim kishnei masar. There are 8 actual slats, but they look like they're 12.
Why 12, not 14?
They look, because there's 4 of them are doubled.
The 6 are 12.
No, there's not 6. 4 of them are L brackets.
4 corners.
4 corners.
Make up
Each corner is a
two
double.
sides.
So
The middle is
the middles are flat.
okay.
The corners are doubles, the middles are flat. So if the corners are doubles, so that's 4 times 2 is 8. And then there's 4 additional ones that look regular. So that's 8 plus 4 is 12. Are you following?
Yeah.
Good. So Rabbi Meir says that you need actually 8 pieces. And so now you have a real visual. According to Rabbi Meir, the visual is much stronger.
This is marked off.
That it's marked off. This area inside is now a
not
Rishus
just-
HaYachid.
Not just for other people looking in, but also for you not to walk out of that.
That's correct. Absolutely. Well, primarily for that.
Yeah,
Primarily for that. People are outside, know that they're in a Shus Harabim, and they shouldn't be carrying. But the people who are in, now they're picking up water, drawing water, using buckets, and so on and so forth. And so now, these are the people who, when they're inside, need to know that they can't carry beyond these borders. And now again, this is not in no way is a full fenced-in area. But the rabbis relaxed the rules for the needs of the pilgrims. Gvon asoret tvachim. Now the Mishnah quantifies what we said earlier, and that is that the height must be a minimum of 10 tvachim, 10 fist highs. V'rochbon shisha, and they have to be wide 6 tvachim. 6 tvachim is is 1 amma. So 6 handbreadths is 1 amma.
It's about 18 inches.
So these L brackets, they're not just little L's and little
big
angles.
planks.
They're big, so that they give a clear visual for the people inside. The ovyan kolshu. Now the thickness of these slats, planks, could be anything. So it could be even like very, very thin. So long as it's sturdy enough to stand in the ground, and above the ground is 10 fists high, 10 tvachim high, great. Uveneyem. So now in between these slats, what is the distance, the maximum distance between each slat? They can be the equivalent of 2 teams of 3 oxen each.
In a lawn.
So now you have, as we're going to explain, now the Gemara explains exactly what this idea is here. You have 2 pairs of 3 oxen. Often when people would walk oxen, they would line them up, tie them together, and walk them one way. So now you have 2-way traffic. you have 3 oxen going into this enclosure, 3 oxen coming out of this closure in between these slats. Now each ox, according to the Gemara, the average ox is 1 2/3 amas. 1 2/3 amas. Okay? So 1 2/3 amas.
So it's like
Hold on.
6 or 7 feet.
Now, 1 amma is about 19 inches, so it's about 36 inches. They're wide. Big ox that you're going to bring for a carbon.
Wait, we're talking about their width
The
or
width.
head to nose?
No, their width.
Head to back.
Their width, yeah.
Their width.
Their width.
So you gotta be able to.
So now if
run
you have
2
3
rows.
oxen, each ox, 3 times 1 2/3,
2 and 1.
1 2/3. 3, there's 3 oxen,
Yeah.
right? Now, times times 6. 6 oxen, because you have 3 going in and 3 coming out. So there's 6 of them. Each one is 1 2/3 wide. So whoever has a pen and paper can figure it out. It comes out to 10 amas. 10
amas width.
width. Now we
Between
already
the
discussed this idea of
We-
10
we-
amas
we did this
in
last time.
last Perek, that 10 amas is it's a wide area. And when we're talking about an Eruv and a beam, so you have to have a maximum of 10 amas. So according to Rabbi Meir says that the same rule that applies by an Eruv, that you have the beam across at the end of a dead end, so applies here. So basically, again, 6 oxen wide comes out to
10 amas.
10 amas. You do the math.
Now, why Dafka 6? Why are they using such?
His point is, why is he using? What's he using this crazy
Yeah.
term? Because why are we making this?
Because we're bringing in.
Because we're bringing in animals. Because we're bringing in animals, so that's why he's using it in terms of animals. Otherwise, he could just simply say 10 amas. But the point here is that we got to be able to get traffic in and traffic out to be able to use the watering well for the animals. That's why we're using it here. Rabbi Yehuda says, Shel arba. Each team of oxen, the traffic is 4 lanes going in and 4 lanes going out. Now they're all tied together, so it's tight. It's not, they're not walking barchava with lots of space. So according to him, 10 plus 1 and so according to him, it comes out to 13 1/3 amas.
So he's saying in between you have.
In between the slats, it's bigger. So according to Rabbi Yehuda, he says that because we're relaxing the rules here, because it's a special situation, which is to help the public bring up the animals to the Beis Hamikdash.
So it makes it bigger.
He says Yad Hagdash Shel Yaina. That's not the principle here, but the point is we want to. But well said, we want to be able to get this all up to the Beis Hamikdash, and it's for the pilgrims. So we relax the laws. When we relax the laws, we relax it by 33%. Okay. Now,
It'll go quicker.
what's the point here?
It will go quicker.
Ksures v'lei mutares. In general, what are we talking about? Everybody agrees to this idea that when we talk about the team of oxen that are going through, they're tied up, they're tied together, tight. V'lei mutares and not loose. Achas nechneses v'achas yetzes, one going in and one going out, which in that particular case requires a drop more room because they're not all squeezing in the same direction. Now, Mishnah Beis, muter lahaknev labe'er, one is allowed to bring in these slats closer to the well. However, uvilvad, so long as shetei porer reisha v'ruba b'fnim v'sheisa. While you could make the boundary that we're talking about in the Mishnah is quite large, because between slats is 10 amas, or more than 10 amas, 13 1/3 amas. But you could bring it in very, very close if you want. However, not too close. It has to be a situation where at least the majority of the animal and its head can be inside this partition. What are we concerned about? That if not, you're going to be taking from a Shusar Yachid, which is the well, and then when the animal goes backward, now he's outside of this area, and now you're bringing from a Shusar Yachid to a Shusar Rabbim. So you have to have enough room to give to drink to the animals. Now, the Mishnah, so again, first halacha, the Mishnah tells us that we can bring it in as much as we want until the point where the majority of the animal could be inside and its head. However, what about going the other way? What about widening it and enlarging it? The Tana in this Mishnah says that you can extend it and expand it to any distance you want. So long, sheyarba befasin, that you put in more slats. So again, the idea is that you have to add on slats. So on the corners you have what? You have these 12 slats, and then in the middle, every 10 amis or every 13 and a third amis, depending on who you hold according to, you would have to put another slat that's an amma wide. And so it doesn't matter how big it is, because when somebody is in there, the Rishus Harabim is not going, it disrupts the Rishus Harabim, number one. And number two is, when you're in there, you're going to know where's your boundary, and you're not going to carry out of there. That's what this Tana says. However, in Mishnah Gimel, Rabbi Yehuda argues with this idea, and he says you cannot enlarge it as much as you want. Rather, he says ad beis sasayim, you can only enlarge it to the size of 2 beis sa. Beis means a house, something that can house a sa'ah. A sa is a measurement of grain. So now, where did they get this? It's a weird
analogy.
Not analogy, a size. Where did they get the size? Where measurement? 2 sa. Where did they get 2 sa from? So the 2 sa is as follows. The courtyard, the chutzner in the Mishkan, was how big? You guessed it. 2 sa. 2 sa, which means it was 50 by 100. So 50 by 50 is 1 sa, which is 2,500 square amas. And 50 by 100 is 5,000 square amas. Like the properties in Fairlawn, the average property, the standard property in Fairlawn is 50 by 100. Exactly 5,000 square feet. So it's like the Beis HaMikdash, because here in Fairlawn we're going to bring the Beis HaMikdash back through our Torah study and our mitzvahs. Right? So now, the Beis HaMikdash, the Mishkan was 50 by 100, 5,000 square amas. So now, where do we get all the malachas that we have? Are they written in the Torah somewhere? No. They're all derived. I mean, most of them, I shouldn't think. Most of them are not written in the Torah, clearly. Most of them are derived from the avoda that was done in the Mishkan. So now, since the whole idea is about the Mishkan, so since the size of the Mishkan was this size, so now the rabbi said, so according to Rabbi Yehuda, he says, till the size of the Mishkan. That's it. Beyond that, it's too big, and even if it's marked out with these slats, that would be too big. Amrullah, so they said to him, you got it all wrong. Yes, you're correct that there is a measurement that the rabbis of the previous generation talked about when they spoke about 2 sa, but it's not in this case. Rather, loy amru beis sasayim. They didn't say that the size of 5,000 square amas is only in terms of the legina or the karpef. A gina is a garden, and a karpef is an area an area that's not set aside for living. So the rabbis, even though it's not a Rishus Harabim proper, a Rishus Harabim is a Rishus Harabim, but this is a field, or this is an open space. Like in Fairlawn, a karpef would be next to on Moreland Avenue, the school there, with that huge field there to the side with just trees. That's not a Rishus Harabim. It's not a pathway for people to go through. It's definitely not a Rishus Harabim, but it's also not a Rishus Hayachid, right? So that's a karpef. It's just a big open space with not really doing anything. It's not a garden either. A garden is a garden, and a karpef is just this open space there. So in such a case, those are terminologies that we have in that. And even when we have an Eruv, there's a lot of halachas, which we're not going to get into right now. But it complicates in an Eruv situation when you have these large open spaces. And the reason is because they mimic, they look somewhat, it's difficult to differentiate between the Rishus HaRabim and that. So now, Avalim Hoya deer, but if it was a deer is a place where you enclose livestock for the purpose of letting their manure gather up in this area. So you park in a lot of them so that with time they're going to, excuse me please, and then you're going to be able to fertilize the fields because you have it all concentrated in one area. That's a deer. Oisachar, or a coral, place for holding animals, a pen. Or a backyard, or a courtyard. So in such cases, even if it's the size of 5 cores, not a sa is small measurement. 5 cores is 75,000 square amas. This is a massive area. Mutter, it would be mutter to carry in such a place because these are used for daily living purposes. So you have a house and this massive courtyard or a front yard, backyard, it doesn't matter. But it's there for your pleasure of living. It's associated with your house. It's not just a garden. It's not a carpet. It's not just an open area or even a fenced-in area that is not used for daily living. A carpet could also be a fenced-in area, by the way, that's not used for daily living. So in such a case, it could be as big as you want it to. So now, the Amrulai, the others said to him that this idea of tusa has to do with a gina and a carpet, with a garden and a carpet area. There's nothing to do with what we're talking about here. So you're mixing the two up. And then they say even further, afilu beis asara kohen mutter. If not only five cores, which is massive, but even 10 cores. The point is, it's tremendous. And they say that you can put, and also you can, they hold, you can make it as big as you want, so long as it's clearly marked with the pasim, with these slats. Mishna Dalit, and the halacha, by the way, follows the sages. Rabbi Yehuda says, what happens if this well, earlier we said usually the well is where it's on the side, it's not middle of nowhere. But sometimes when you're looking for a well, you only find it where? In the middle. So now, if the general traffic passes between these slats, now again, Tanams is a big area. It's not a small area. It's a big area there between the slats.
A road can easily pass.
What?
A road can pass.
A road, a small road, certainly a big pathway can go. So Yisakleno, let's start them. So you have to traffic cone them off to the sides. You know, send the traffic, the pedestrian traffic away from there. In other words, he's saying if they're going through, it's kind of like a Rishus HaRabim in that enclosure also. So what does it help? Yeah, maybe, and perhaps he doesn't say this, but perhaps you won't see these pasim because of the people coming through. It won't be so clear. Now the sages disagree with him. Now, even if the rabbim is going through these slats, the fact that we have these slats and we have these demarcations, one will know that in here we can carry and outside we cannot. This all applies. Whether it's a ber harabim, a public cistern. Cistern water is usually, it's not well water. It's a pit that's usually cemented.
Hard.
So now the water there sits, so it gets foul. It's not really good for human drinking. Echad ber harabim, uve'er harabim, and certainly a well that belongs to the public. Ve'er hayachid, or a private well. In any of these cases, oisim lehem pasim, we can make these flimsy makeshift partitions. Avol, however, levoir hayachid, for a private cistern, a well has lots of water in there, but a cistern only has limited amount of water, and so we're not going to be able to use it for the public. We're not going to be able to use it for get so much water out of there. What do you got to do? But for a private cistern, you have to make it a proper mechitza, a proper fence, which is 10 tfachim high, and we cannot use this leniency of just using slats. Divrei Rabbi Akiva, these are the words of Rabbi Akiva. Because he says, the reason why we make this dispensation, this whole business came for why? For the benefit of the pilgrims when they come up. Here, a private cistern is not going to be used for the even if a person wants to be generous with his water, he can't, because he only has limited amount of water in the cistern. So how many people could he serve before it dries up? Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava Eimer. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava says, Ein oisin pasin ela levera rabim bilvad. The whole purpose here is so that we can use it for the public. A cistern also. How much water could we fit in a cistern? It's limited water. It's just a pool. And when you have thirsty cattle coming through, how much water can it give? So he says that when a well has lots of water. So in such a case, the Chachamim relax the rules. This is what Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava says. Right. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava says, he's going to argue with the other people earlier. Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava says, Hagina v'akarpef shem shivin amma v'shirayim al shim amma v'shirayim mukefes godar. He says that a gina, a garden, or a karpif that we were discussing before, if it's 70 and a third, and 70 and a third, he doesn't say that, but 70 and a little bit, and 70 and a little bit, which comes out to how much? You don't have to learn geometry to know this. It's 5,000 square feet. It's the same size as, what? 49,000. So it's 49,000 and a little bit. So it comes out to 50,000. So 50,000 square feet, which is the same term as, he says, doesn't matter the shape, so long as, even if it's square. 50,000 square. So now what he's saying is, up to the maximum of 5,000 square ames. Mukefes goder, once we have a goder around it, once we have a fence around it, that's sort of tvachim, metaltalim b'seicha, we can carry inside. Now the chiddush here is that these areas are not attached to homes. They're not used for daily living, as we said before. Nevertheless, since it has a proper fence around it, so since it has a proper fence around it, we can carry in it. But more than that, even if it has a fence around it, it's this massive area. You don't realize that there's a fence. You're not looking at the fence. You start confusing this and public domains. And so you can't have an unlimited area that's fenced in and now you can carry in there, unless it's associated with daily living in a home. Well, now, he quantifies this even further. Now even this area, which is only 5,000 square ames, must have one of the following. Either it has to have it has to have a watchman's hut in there, or a dwelling of some sort, which is not even, obviously we're not talking about a house. It could be like some sort of tent, some sort of, yeah. Or if it's right next to the city, where it's in the Tchum Shabbos. So in there, in such a place, we're not in the wilderness somewhere in Yehupitz. So according to Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, such a place, even though it's a karpif and a gina, because it's surrounded by a proper fence, you can carry in there. Rabbi Yehuda says, now before we said Rabbi Yehuda ben Bava, who's this Rabbi Yehuda? Rabbi Yehuda ben Rabbi Elai. Rabbi Yehuda ben Rabbi Elai says, Afilo ein bo elaver, even if it has only a bor, a circular pit for water, or a siach, which is a rectangular pit. This is the Gemara defines this in Bava Kama. or a ma'ara, or a cave, whether it's a cave to cool off or a watering cave, it's a machlokes. In any case, if it has even one of those things in there, you can carry inside. Rabbi Akiva Omer, now Rabbi Akiva mixes in and he says it doesn't need any of these. It doesn't need any of these things. It doesn't need a pit, it doesn't need a cistern, it doesn't need a cave. You can carry in it. So long as it's no more than 5,000 square amas. Rabbi Eliezer says, if it's more than double the width, if the length is more than double the width, then you can't carry in it. Why? Because in the Mishkan, what was the shape? It was double the length versus the width. So he says it's not even even if he brings up another idea. And the other idea is it has to be a similar shape. It can't surpass the shape. So Rabbi Eliezer, if it's more than double the length as it is the width, you can't carry. You can't carry inside. Rabbi Yasi disagrees. He disagrees with all of this, and he says you can indeed carry in it. The shape is not important. Rabbi Eli. Have we heard of him before? Yes, we just said Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Eli. So now here's the father speaking. Shamati min Rabbi Eliezer. He heard from Rabbi Eliezer, his Rebbe. Even if it's the size of a base kur, which is much bigger. All of these things are acceptable that we were talking about. Before we're talking sa and tusa, base kur is much bigger, which translates to 75,000 square amas. And I also heard another thing that I heard from Rabbi Eliezer. This is Rabbi Eli testifying that he heard things from his Rebbe. First thing he heard, that even if it's as big as a kur, that's number one. Second thing he heard, I also heard from him, here we're getting into a whole new halacha. If you have a courtyard, and there's houses that open up into this courtyard, and so they have to make an Eruv Chatzeris, which we're going to discuss at a later time. But it's suffice it to say it's called the Eruv Chatzeris, where they all join their properties together. Now everybody did it, but one person who's in this Chatzer, his house opens into this Chatzer, he forgot. He didn't join in the Eruv. So basically, so this person, he can't carry into his house from the Chatzer and out from his house. But the other people can carry for him into his house and out of his house. Because since the Chatzer, the whole Chatzer was included in this Eruv, and they were part of the Eruv, so they can carry into his house and out of his house, there's no issue, but he cannot carry out of anything. He also heard from Rabbi Eliezer, Akravnin the Pesach. Akravnin was some sort of bitter herb. The Gemara defines it as a vine that grows around date palms. So he says it's considered a bitter herb. What can we use it for? He says, I also heard from Rabbi Eliezer that you can use this vine that grows around date palms for Maror on Pesach. So these are the three things he heard from him. I went to all the other Talmidim from the class. He went to everybody else. I looked to find somebody who would testify with me and say, oh, I also heard this from Rabbi Eliezer. I could find no one else who heard these three ideas from Rabbi Eliezer like I heard it. That is the end, my friends, of chapter 2 of Masechtas Eruvin. Please do join us again next week for chapter 3 of Masechtas Eruvin. Have a very good evening.